Welcome everyone to what's going to be the final episode of 2024 of the Runners Roundtable. And today I am joined by Makenzie Rink, and we are going to talk about one of my favorite topics. And I feel like I always say that I will die on the pedestal or whatever the saying is when it comes to this, that the running community is beautiful, but the truth of the running community is that not all paces are welcomed, depending on where you're showing up. Just not all paces are welcome. And I feel like there's almost, I've had so many moments of feeling bad saying that. And then I stopped feeling bad a couple of weeks ago or a month ago. I can't even remember the time frame when one of my friends actually sent me your reel about not all paces are welcome. And I was like, wait a minute, I need to reach out to her and hopefully she's okay with coming on the podcast and talking to me about this topic because it's nuanced and there's just I mean, me personally, whenever I see something that says all paces welcomed, I automatically default to like, oh yeah, they're talking about people who can run a 10-minute pace or faster. Like that's been my experience. So we'll get into that. But first, I would like you to introduce yourself to us and tell us a little bit about how you got into running and where are you currently with running?
Oh, great questions. Hey everyone. My name is Mackenzie. I am the realistic runner on social media, Instagram and TikTok. And yeah, that what that means, the realistic runner, that all came about a little over a year ago and started posting on social media to represent and kind of call out what is actually realistic within the running space because I moved back home after college and wanted to find a running community. And at that point, I had ran a marathon, had ran a half marathon. I knew I was a runner, but I just ran a little bit slower than what you see on social media typically. A lot of people's paces on social media at that point, at least what I was seeing was 9, 10 minute miles. And to me, that was not where I was at. I was like, I can't be the only one. And after going to a running group here in Asheville, North Carolina, I did not have a great experience. I got left behind, I got lost, and the easiest or the slowest pace was a 10-minute mile. And I was like, what in the heck? And you can go back on my Strava page and my post. And when I went to that run, I was like, where are my realistic runners? And that's kind of where it became that name. And then a month later, I started posting on social media to see if there was anyone that ran, a 13 to 15 minute mile and was run walking and bringing in the back. Um, and sure enough, here we are. So, all that to say, I started my running journey in college as a way to escape kind of some of the mental health things that I was struggling with. It became my outlet. I also got a dog, and she's very, very hyper. So I needed to exercise her. And that was the cheapest way I could find to exercise her. So, yeah, it was, a bonding experience for us, but also a way for me to really cope with a lot of things I was struggling with in college. And I had a friend that was running too, and she kind of introduced me as well. And that snowballed into training for a half marathon. I kind of went 0 to 100 with that. And the end goal was to run a marathon, but I ended up getting injured because in my mind, I thought that you had to run a 9 to 10 minute mile to be considered a runner. Anything slower than that was not acceptable. So I really shocked my body and my system, especially not growing up a runner. And after I got injured after the half marathon, that's when I realized, hey, pump the brakes. I had a conversation with my uncle, who is a big triathlon person and has done a couple half Ironmans, and he was like, "Have you ever tried heart rate training and slowing down?" And I was like, "No, I didn't realize that you could slow down."
Yeah.
And it was acceptable. So that kind of turned into this whole journey of really embracing just slowing down, not pushing yourself, and building a base that could sustain you for a really long time. And yeah, and ever since then, that was I believe end of 2022 is when I had that conversation. And I decided to start running again and training for a marathon in college my senior year and with this new mindset. And yeah, and ran my first marathon in March 2023, and here we are. So it's been about 3 years of running and just the ebbs and flows and really learning about all the different things and, starting fresh and, running and then hating it and running again and loving it and learning all the different aspects that go into the space. Um, yeah, and I think you asked where I am now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Where I am now with running, this year in 2024, I've come off of a very big year. Um, being in the content creation space over the last year and a half or so, I've learned a lot. And one of those lessons that I've learned, particularly this year, is there is a lot of, I don't want to say pressure, but there's a lot of um push to do races. I think when you start documenting your running journey, and typically that avenue is you're training for a race and you're documenting that training process. And that's kind of what happened with me. I was running the Chicago Marathon last year and I was documenting that training process. And once I ran the Chicago Marathon, it was like, well, what's next? Like I had built this platform around running a race. I got to keep running races. And so 2024, while there was a storyline and there was a purpose behind it, I wanted to prove that anyone could run these races, could do the scary thing and sign up for that half marathon, for that 5K, for that 10K, for that marathon and do it as a back of the pack member. Um, I think it's really easy to get sucked in to the pressure of continuing to do races, even if it's not the best thing for your body and for your mind. And while I am so proud of all 9 races that I did this year, right now I'm in this phase of relearning to love running and to not get sucked into that pressure while there's opportunities and there's, certain, I guess, perks, I guess you could say, of being in this space. I think learning to say no to some things
Hmm.
so you can, yeah, learning to say no to some things, even if it might be the opportunity of a lifetime, um, so you don't get burnt out and you don't um, expend so much energy that you can't continue in a sport that you love. Because what I was experiencing, and there was other external factors, going through Hurricane Helene and, um, losing my aunt, that kind of created this other, factor that created some like not hate towards running, but just like bleh, bleh attitude towards running. Um, that continual training for something and like having those big races really shifted my intention towards running. And I think refocusing, because running is something that I love. It's something that brings me joy. And I want to get back to that. And I want to treat races as something that's to be celebrated. It's a big buildup. I mean, like it is a celebration. And like I think having back to back to back to back, it's awesome and it keeps you on a goal and it keeps you structured. But sometimes those races can lose their pizzazz and can lose their spark when you have another race lined up right behind it. So that's kind of my focus this year. And right now, I've got nothing on the docket as far as races are concerned. And I'm running for the sake of running and relearning to love that. I will say I am doing a Girls on the Run 5K on Sunday, which I'm super excited about. I got asked to be a running buddy from a young girl that runs with our crew, and she was like, I was like, well, we gotta go all out. We gotta dress up. She's like,
Yeah.
well, you wear your pickle hat all the time. Let's dress up as pickles. So now I'm gonna be dressed up as a pickle on Sunday.
I
Uh,
love that.
and yeah, I don't know. I think that's kind of where I'm at is like, you know what? I would this year in 2025, coming up year, community, I think is going to be my biggest focus and really bringing opportunity to the community. Um, what races can we do? What, you know, things can I get for them? Like, making it more accessible and really embracing the community that has built me up over the last year and a half, and giving back. So, yeah, that was a very long-winded answer to your question.
I love it all. I love it all. And before I ask you anything else, I just want to give you a moment to update us on how things are looking in Asheville and
Yeah.
just like a quick plug of organizations that I know you have them linked. Um, but if there's anyone that you want to shout out in terms of supporting, I'm like,
Yeah.
I want to get that out early so that if you're listening, you're going to hear it early and then you can continue to listen. But how are things in Asheville following the hurricane? And then just any organizations that you'd like to shout out that we can maybe send some dollars over to.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Um, Asheville is, I think there's a lot of goodness that, you know, amongst the devastation and amongst the heartbreak, there is a lot of goodness. The community has really come together in a way that I've never seen. I've lived here all of my life, and it's been really cool to see how everyone's kind of set aside their differences to come together and help one another out, help one another rebuild, whether that's their homes, it's a business, it's, family members, friends, and kind of getting back to some sense of normalcy.
Mhm.
Um, and I think the biggest thing that I've noticed, it's been almost 2 months since the hurricane hit, and the initial shock of the hurricane has subsided, and obviously the news cycles have kind of pushed out. There's not a lot of attention anymore, but it is the holiday season. So tapping into a lot of these small businesses that are still up and running. I mean, the weird thing about this hurricane is while it impacted all of Western North Carolina, there are bubbles where it didn't hit as bad. So like those businesses are open. They're ready to be shopped at. They're ready for business. They're ready for tourists. Uh, and like, that's those cities have been broadcasted, like places like Weaverville, Mars Hill, downtown Asheville, um, and a couple other places. Like they're up and running. So like come visit. Like, we need your money. And if you don't want to visit, like, shop online. A lot of these places have built up storefronts online. So if there's something that you enjoy, whether it's like artwork or it's pottery or it's running gear or I'm trying to think of other things. Like, think about the common things that you would purchase gift wise for your people in your life this holiday season. Look at businesses in Asheville and what they're doing. So search up like pottery places in Asheville. There's plenty that will come up and are selling and ready for that. And it's beautiful stuff. I mean, like we're a very artistic community in Western North Carolina. There's a lot of great artists, a lot of great small businesses. That are kind of slept on, in my opinion, but I'm also biased. So, um, and you know, if you can't support in that way, reposting on social media is another really, really helpful way. So amplifying small businesses that you find on social media. And if anyone needs any recommendations, feel free to message me on Instagram or TikTok, and I'll give you a list of small businesses to promote. Um, and aside from that, a lot of organizations that are still doing great work. Beloved Asheville is a great nonprofit, and they've built a lot of homes for folks that lost their homes to the hurricane, and it's been really cool to see their process. So if you want to give financially, they do a great job at like updating on social media and on their website about where that money is going and where those donations are going. Um, Samaritan's Purse is a great opportunity if you want to come in and volunteer. They're still taking volunteers. Um, but yeah, I there's still a lot of devastation. I actually went to Marshall, North Carolina yesterday to do some work, and Marshall is right next to the river, and it was one of the smaller towns that got very, very devastated. And I think just I was talking with someone, a business owner there, and she said it great. She was like, just keep checking in, set an alarm on your calendar, or on your phone or something like that, and every month, and just check in on how Western North Carolina is doing and how you can help, what progress is being made. And yeah, I think that's a great reminder because at the end of the day, it's like just because the news is gone and like social media and the algorithm has kind of moved on, uh, it doesn't mean that we're done. Like when you drive through the River Arts District or you drive through these smaller towns that were by the river or were deeply impacted by like mudslides and landslides, like it's kind of at a stall right now, I think is the best word I can say. Like the shock is gone, it's getting colder. People are just
Mhm.
exhausted. Like those people that are living in the thick of it, it's like after a month and a half, there's little that you have to give to keep going. Um, so if you have a free weekend and you're close by, come down and help out and volunteer. Give energy to those that don't have the energy. Um, and check in on people, creators or communities within the space, see how you can help. Uh, yeah, those are like probably my big tips.
Yeah. And again, I'll include the your link tree because I saw there you have
Yeah,
a lot of resources there so that people can check out if they're interested, willing, and able to help out
yeah.
for what's going on there. Okay, so to bring it back to running and this idea of running, found it really interesting because when I started running, I did all the races. I mean, I think in my first year of running, I did something like 26 races. A lot of them
Woo.
were 5Ks, like a lot of them were 5Ks. But now, I mean, I'm probably in a very similar boat to you where I did 9 races, between 9 and 10 races this year. And for me, they were definitely clustered. They're clustered in the beginning of the year when I'm doing like half marathons, and then the end of the year, fall is when I have been doing a marathon. And it's so interesting what you say because it is really easy to get caught up in the okay, I have this event, but then I have another event, but then I have another event, and then another event. And it does lose its specialness. And it also ends up becoming kind of like a chore of like, well, now I need to get it done, or now I need to get it done. And yeah, depending on how much you share about that on Instagram or on wherever you are on social media, it does feel like a chore. It does feel like, oh, here's this thing that I'm doing, and I need to make sure I'm giving people updates and checking in with them. But at the same time, and this is why I always struggle with social media because it's that tension of feeling like you have to post or share or follow up or check in with the desire to want to post, to follow up, to check in so that people can see that someone like you is doing this really, really hard thing. And if someone sees you doing it, then perhaps they'll be inspired to do it themselves. So I find that that's the tension that I usually navigate of wanting to share, but then also not wanting to share, but also questioning why I'm even doing anything. Like, who am I?
Yeah.
Not why am I doing it? It's who am I doing it for?
Mm,
Like, am I doing
yeah.
it for myself or am I doing it so that there is something that I can post about on social media or I can share about on social media? And again, there's that tension of wanting to share so that people can see that, hey, someone who looks like you, someone who's your age, someone who, in my case, is a mom with 2 teenage daughters, like she can still do that. You want to inspire people to think more of themselves or to believe more of themselves. But then it just feels like for me, I just come back to that word of tension. Like there just
Mm,
feels like there's such a tension there. How do you navigate that? Or how are you trying to navigate that?
that's a great question. Um, hmm. So I don't think I've said this before in other podcasts and instances and with people, but uh when I started this, I had no intention of being a quote unquote running content creator, influencer, whatever you want to say. I hate those things anyway, because I'm just a human being at the end of the day. Um, but that was not my goal. My goal was to have some level of accountability. I think, there is something to be said about putting your effort out there to the internet, posting it on Strava or posting it on Instagram, TikTok, whatever. Um, but I also just wanted to find community. So I think when I can remind myself of that tension tends to go away. Um, but when I get caught up, not you, when I get caught up
Yeah.
in, you know, the momentum, the energy, if like a post does well or um, gets a lot of likes and comments and shares or get a lot of that causes a lot of follower, like when you get caught up in the numbers, let's say, uh that's when that tension rises, I find, and that's when I lose sight of the purpose of starting this whole thing in the first place, and it's community for me. You get, and I think that's the biggest thing that I wasn't really prepared for. No, there's not a guidebook or a handbook to this, and like what I've realized in this space is that everyone's trying to figure it out at the end of the day. And it causes a lot of comparison. Because I mean, you can go on social media now, especially in the running content creator space, and there's so many content creators that are preaching the same message. Like I could give you a list of 10 right now that are saying the same thing that I'm probably saying. It's just a different person saying it.
Yeah.
And I think we get so caught up in like, well, I'm trying to be a different version or a different person of that's saying the same thing that everyone else is saying. And it's like, well, we're all just, how about we just build each other up? Like we're
Yeah.
all like building the same communities. I guarantee that most of the people that follow you probably follow me. And I think when you can place it and you can keep your eye on the original intent of why you started, that that tension goes away. Um, and can guide you better into your next steps in like this space. I don't know if that answered your question, but that's
Yeah, I mean, it kind of goes back to, so I always reflect on what's my why. And
yes,
you're
yeah,
just you're phrasing it differently than what I do, because I usually say what's my why, whereas the way you phrased it, which I really really like, it's um is this idea of connecting to purpose, right? So like
yeah,
what is the purpose of what you're doing? What is your purpose? What are you hoping to gain from doing what you're doing? And does it connect to your least listening to you, what's a deep core value of what you do? It's community. It is connecting community, it's building community, it is increasing community. And by increasing community, I want to bring this in because you have it, and it's a two-parter, right? You can be and you are a runner. And I even wrote it down. So I'm sorry if you see me like looking down, it's because I'm taking
yeah,
notes. Always take notes. Um, because I love that. You said you can be and you are a runner. And I even broke it down. I'm like, wait a minute, she's talking about two different things here. Like it's
yep,
you can be a runner, that's one thing. And then you are a runner, that's a different thing. At least the way I receive that is I can be a runner, right? I can physically do the thing. Can I? But the idea of being a runner, that's a more mental thing. Like I can physically do the thing, but
yep,
mentally believing I'm a runner, that's different, right? So when you thought of those words or when you share those words, you can be and you are a runner. I guess the question I have for you is just what was the genesis of that? Of saying like, hey, this is kind of like my mission statement. Like that's I guess that's the way I
mm,
thought. I'm like, all right, this is a mission statement here. Where
yeah.
did that come from?
So that stemmed from my journey because when I started running, it was for my mental health, and it was my at the time too, my aunt was in the hospital and was sick, and she was a big movement oriented person, probably one of the healthiest people I knew in my life at the time. And it was my way to connect with her from afar and to move my body. Um, and so when I started running, like I said earlier, I had that mentality that in order to be a runner, you had to run X pace and X miles and all these things, this narrative that had been kind of ingrained in my brain, one from having two brothers that ran competitively in high school and in college, and then having um, just the storyline told over social media and through various brands and whatnot. Um, and once I was able to start breaking down those walls for myself and slow down, literally, uh, I realized like one, for those people that are entering into the sport, you can be a runner. So like that physical component, right? Um, and anyone can be a runner. I firmly believe that anyone can run a marathon if they wanted to. Um, but that second layer of you are a runner, I think that's where people struggle. That's where I struggled. I didn't start calling myself a runner until I ran a marathon, which is mind-boggling to me because at that point I had ran a half marathon, I had ran a 5K, 10K, and I didn't see myself as a runner until I got to that marathon distance. Um, and it's funny because when I tell people that, they're like, "Oh yeah, same. I agree. I couldn't call
Mhm.
myself a runner until I ran a marathon either." And it's like, if you're running at any point in the week consistently and consecutively, you're a runner. Like you're out there running and therefore you are a runner. And um I think that's been a huge proponent of, in addition to community within that I've been wanting to build in this space, like helping people to see like you are a runner, whether you're running 5Ks consistently, you're running once a week, and or you're running, 5 marathons in a year, like you're a runner and your pace, your background, your body type, none of that shit matters, for lack of a better word. And breaking that down at just a very, very simple level. Because I think it's something that like like is easy to speak to. It's like that uh entry level mindset. And once you can nail that and you can embrace that, the rest of it comes a lot easier. So at least that's what I've experienced, and hopefully that's what others experience. So, but
Yeah.
it's a hard one to break down, like really embracing the fact that you are a runner. Um, so because we have a lot of storylines coming at us from a lot of different directions.
Yeah. I feel so I started running a decade before you, right? Like 2012. Um, and I find that it was very fortunate to start running then because social media wasn't what it was, like
Yeah.
what it is now. So even then, I did not consider myself a runner until about a year after I had started running. And at that point, I had ran, it's got to have been at least 5 half marathons, right? Like
Yeah.
I did not consider myself a runner because I'm like, oh, but I think I had this idea that because I was doing it for fun, I wasn't a runner. And because I also didn't grow up playing sports or doing any kind of athletics, I didn't feel like an athlete. Like I was like, no, that's not me. Like I'm just, yes, I run on the weekends and yes, I run 3 days a week. But to say that I am a runner, did not feel it because
Mm,
whatever my idea of being a runner, it felt so far removed from me. And a lot of it had to do with, I think the messaging I got growing up about running was very much so running is something you do to lose weight
mm,
and or running is something you do like if you play a sport and or running is that thing that you do because you're being punished for not doing something else, right? Like in school, like
yeah.
running the mile felt like a punishment, right? Like
Yes.
it's like you're if you're in PE and no one's listening,
Uh,
then go run a lap. So like to me, running was just a thing and not necessarily an identity or something that I could claim as part of my identity. So I want you to know you are not alone in that. And I have a feeling a lot of people would agree with you
mm,
on that because we do. I find that a lot of people diminish themselves when it comes to their accomplishments in running because they're not fast enough. And that drives me crazy,
yeah.
where it's like, don't take away from that. Like, don't take away from your experience of what you did because you didn't run fast. Like, what does fast even mean? Right? Like,
Hmm.
it's so relative. And
Yep.
it's so upsetting. So, to kind of bring it back to like the big topic of this episode, right? That not all paces are welcome. And you shared your run club experience. I've shared before, I think in the past year to 2 years, definitely this year, I went to a run club um and I left there not feeling good about myself. And I remember like calling, I like texted my husband that morning. I was like, that was not a fun experience. Not a
Yeah.
fun experience. I'm like, it doesn't matter how long I've been in the running space. Whenever I show up to a run club that says all pace is welcome, and that is not the case, and I'm either at the back or just like trotting along, because that's what I say. I'm like, I feel like most of the time I'm just trotting along. I'm just trying to
Yeah.
like, just trying to like not lose my breath, to lose my mind, to like have my heart hurt, right? Like I just feel like I'm
Yeah.
trotting around. And I ended up like with that run club experience, I ended up spending the next like 3 days sulking about it. Like I was
Mm,
just so upset because I was like, wait a minute. I opened myself up to the experience of going to a new run club. And even though I've been running forever and I've done marathons and I've done all the things like the longer distances, there's still a part of me that gets upset when I don't. I think the root of it is really like I don't feel like I belong
mm,
because I'm left behind, even though the run club said all paces welcome.
mm-hmm.
And that's, again, as someone who's been running, like now I'll see run clubs and I'm like, cool, y'all look like it would be a lot of fun. I would like to be a part of that. But then there's, I don't know if it's my ego, my heart, or what it is that I just can't, like I will not go out of my way. And maybe it's wrong. I don't know. Maybe other people feel this way as well. I just don't go out of my way anymore to try to go to run clubs because of that. Because
Yeah.
it is very lonely to be
Mm-hmm.
the last person or to be towards the back or to show up, be the new face and
Mm-hmm.
not have anyone put any effort into
Mm-hmm.
like getting to know you or like staying back with you or even just I've seen this at other run clubs. So I know it exists, but like even having someone like run back and like finish the run with you. So even if you're alone for part of it, at least you're finishing with someone.
Yeah.
Um, so I guess what do you say to that?
Um, well, there's a lot. I first completely agree. I I heard Martinez Evans, the founder of Slow AF Run Club. I heard him speak at TRE, which is the running event trade show last year. Because the company I was working for last year was heavily immersed in the industry. And he had said like he was talking about all paces are welcome, like that blanket phrase. Um, and that's what kind of inspired that video in the first place. Um, because it's true, like just because you can say all paces are welcome, yeah, all paces are welcome, show up, like whatever, but that doesn't mean that it will be supported. And that's the difference is, what are we saying and what is that meaning when we continue to say all paces are welcome? Like what does when you break it down from like a singular word standpoint, like okay, well, welcome means like at least in my mind, welcome means like you're going to be embraced, like you're going to feel seen, heard, and validated, and all these things. But that might not be someone else's definition of welcome. Like, yeah, come on, welcome in. I'm not going to say anything to you, but welcome in. Like, um, and it's not right or wrong, it just is. And I think that's where we have to really, as an industry, as communities in general, it's like be clear in that. Like, there is nothing wrong with having a running club that fits one narrow view of doing. And like those spaces are those spaces and they do great. Like there's plenty of run clubs out there on social media in different cities that like clearly like what type of people are going to be there, what type of paces are going to be there. There's nothing wrong with that. Like have your space. That's great. But don't say all paces are welcome when that is not true. And um and especially when it's not going to be supported and especially when you are you do have a large presence, you do have a lot of influence and you are a big part of the industry. And that's kind of just like the general theme and tendency in the space. As you know, I was only working in the running industry for 1 year and I really, that's all you need to see the trends. Like, and for me, you have all these, like, you have a lot of running stores across the US that have group runs and whatnot. And the tendency is like your cross country folks showing up. It's your Boston qualifiers showing up. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like I love that. But like when you have the responsibility of being a hub spot for runners, walkers, grandparents, you name it, like that are getting quality running shoes, like be a place for everybody. And especially when you're saying all paces are welcome, make sure that you're supporting that. So I think really just like breaking down that phrase has been important and um like being very definitive and clear in what those expectations are. And like there like I said, there is nothing wrong with having groups for certain paces and certain people and whatever. Like it's important. Like if you have someone that does want to Boston qualify, great. Have a speed workout, track workout group for that. So you guys can push each other to get to that goal. But there is not enough spaces in this industry for these groups, for back of the pack members, for all women, like for minority groups, like, and that's where it needs to be called out because typically these groups fit one narrative and that has to shift because that is not the reality. Like it is not the reality. Like you show up to and I think that's like where races are a great representation because it's like you really do see how many people are ringing in the back, especially now with like the social media movement that's been happening in the last year. Like uh, there are so many people ringing in the back, and I'm like, every part of the pack deserves community. And whenever I talk to people that have like a really solid running group and that may not cater to like 11, 12, 13, 15 plus minute miles, I'm like, I ask them, how has your running community impacted your life? And they, will list reasons like they were there for them during like their darkest moments and help them through their grief process without saying anything, but like just being there. And I'm like, so why are we not doing that for everybody? Like, why does not everyone have that space to just show up and like just exist and be supported? And because running is so therapeutic and everyone, in my opinion, deserves that level of community and that level of therapy. It's like an unspoken therapy. So, yeah.
Yeah, so I have like so many thoughts because I'm with you. I honestly wish more clubs would be honest and just say,
Yeah.
hey, our paces are this. I would rather that, like me personally, I would rather know our pace, our slowest pace is a 10-minute mile. I would rather know that because then I can make that decision to not go, or
Yeah.
I can make that decision to I think it goes back to like preparation for me, right? So if I go, but I am prepared because I know that I'm going to be the last person or I know that I'm going to be at the back, then it's cool. Then at that point, it is a social experience and I'm like, it is a different social experience versus if I'm showing up at a run club, hoping for community, hoping to meet those people that will become those friends off the run, that will be there for me, whenever anything's happening and then I go and I'm on my own, then that expectation or the expectation, the hope that I had of the run club, I mean, it just comes crashing against reality. And then it's very,
Yeah.
very disappointing. So I'm with you in that I personally wish all clubs would just say, these are the paces that we're running. So even if it means that you're not saying all paces welcome or you're not saying anything about anybody being welcomed, but this is our run club, these are the pace groups, or this is the pace range that we tend to run in.
Yeah.
I would much rather that because then I can make an informed decision for myself as to do I want to spend my time going to that space? And then if I go to that space, then all right, I'm going to own however I feel about being in that space, but at least I made that decision for
Yep.
myself versus going there and having the decision made for me. That's
Yep.
just kind of it. Um, so the question I have as a follow-up is just, and this is kind of like more of I think trying to get into the psyche of these run clubs, but why do you think run clubs, running groups, running stores, why do you think they don't do that?
Mm. Uh, I think it boils down to, I mean, the fact of the matter is that running is and has been a, especially like in the US, has been a predominantly like white male industry and a very competitive industry as well. You think about the way that running is ingrained in a lot of people at a very young age. If you get into cross country, if you get into track and field, and that perpetuates on into college and pro. And when you go into like a lot of these industry events, like you're gonna see that. Like, and while like it may feel from like a marketing standpoint that like we're moving in a different direction, like yeah, there's definitely movement in that. But like these big leaders in like the industry at these brands are still what you think. Like what you probably think is what's happening. And that's I'm speaking from like seeing it with my own eyes. And while there are a lot of people in these spaces and that are industry leaders that would identify as a back of the pack member and also don't feel comfortable being in the industry or running with their, colleagues, like it still is very competitive driven because think about running in general. Like running is you're pushing yourself to be the best version of yourself. Like runners just have this innate like drive within no matter what level you are. Like you're deciding to go outside and stomp the ground for hours at a time. Like that is not appealing to most people. Like um but I think that that level of competitiveness has been perpetuated and drawn out to an extreme level at times. And it's harder to like while everyone wants to get better in the space, there's years and decades worth of like ideology that just has to be broken down and that will not be overnight. Um, and it takes individuals and crews and clubs around the world that are representing and showing the need for better representation in the space to like be like, hey, we're doing it. Um, and also like too, like the industry is slow moving. Like as competitive and fast as they are, like they're slow moving. And like I when I was working with my other company, like one thing that I learned was a lot of like run specialty stores didn't get like an e-commerce site until like 2020. It took a pandemic for them to like have a like
Yeah.
online storefront. And which, there's a lot of other things behind that that create that. But like still 2020 is crazy. And there's a lot of gaps between and a lot of bridges that have to be built between brands and like run specialty stores and other major like corporate stores like Fleet Feet, like those franchises and um then also connecting it back to the consumer. So like you have all these trends that are being told and these stories being told on social media, but they're not being heard in the industry.
Yeah. And I think of even just, think of like the big shoe companies. We don't have to name any of them. People can just think of whatever shoe company. And it's like, where is all their research and development going into? They're going into producing shoes that are going to make you faster, right? Like
Yeah.
clothes that are going to make you faster. Like that's kind of it. And so there is even in that, like where their money is going is very indirectly or implicitly telling all of us that the goal with running is to get faster, right? Like
Mhm.
that's it. Like if my
And to
money,
be the smallest version of yourself
oh,
too.
absolutely. I was going to say, I
Yeah.
won't even, I wasn't even going to touch that. I was going to say, let's not forget that there's,
Oh no. We'll air out the dirty laundry. Don't worry. I'm not afraid.
I was going to say that, like, I think of some of, some, some of the brands out there that it's incredible clothing. And yet, the sizes aren't necessarily made for
Oh yeah.
everybody.
Oh
And
yeah. I mean, look at like my favorite thing is you look at a lot of marketing campaigns that have been done over the last, I don't know, 4 or 5 years, and they're spreading a message that's incredible. Um, like my favorite one was the New Balance Run Your Way, right? Yeah, Run Your Way or
yeah, I think so.
and great video. You had so many different body types, paces, like energy levels in that, like, those ads. And what's the sizing at New Balance? What are the clothes? What do they go up to? What's the range? What are the new shoes preaching? What are those messages? Like it's those are like the things. It's like, do the actions match up to the messages that you're preaching? Like I'm a very much actions speak louder than words. Like if your intentions are genuinely to like be for everyone and to get better, then like great. Like do it. And it might not be perfect. It might be a little janky, but at least the intentions are there and at least they're evident. But if you're just saying something to get on the trend, I'm not gonna say anything. But
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah. I mean, I think of it, it's just something as simple as um there's I don't want to say them, but there's a brand that I love, and my biggest issue with them has been the age of their
mm,
models and how the age of the models are predominantly people like in their 20s or
they're prime.
yeah, or maybe like maybe it's early 30s, but I'm like, I'm 40, so I'm like, no, I actually want to see women in their 40s and 50s. Like, I want to see that 60-year-old woman. Like, that's
Yeah.
that's the face I want to see in the campaign, because at least at this point, where I'm at is I'm trying to appreciate what I can do now, but I'm also really, really hopeful that I can continue to do this for the next 20, 30 years. So for me to see a woman that's, heading a campaign and it's someone in her 60s or
Yeah.
whatever the case is, because I'm just assuming ages here, that to me is aspirational. I'm like, wait a minute, yes, that's a message that speaks to me. Whereas what you're
Mm,
saying is like, oh, here's the message. But then when you go to our website or you go to the store, those sizes aren't actually going to be in the store, or the shoe with the wider foot is not going to be in the store. So it's
yeah.
it's definitely an interesting thing. And I wanted to go back to what you kind of had said it, and then at one point you actually said the words gap,
Mm,
because as I was listening to you speak and I wrote it down, right? There's this thing of breaking down what it means to be a runner so that everyone feels like they do belong in the running space. And obviously, to break that down, we need to break down, like what you said, just years and decades of a certain narrative of what it means to be in the running space. And then for women, it's further breaking it down because women have been in the running space for less time. But there's this breakdown of what it needs to be a runner. Then there's got to be that space, right? There's
yeah.
got to be space for people to show up. And then once those people show up, there's got to be other people in that space to truly welcome them. And I find that, again, in listening to you speak, where I was like, oh, the gap is the space. That's what we don't have. That's what's not available for a lot of people. It's the space. And again, when we're kind of going back to that, not all paces are welcome. It's that not all paces are welcome, and it's okay that not all paces are welcome. But where it's not okay is that then there aren't spaces for everybody else, or people don't feel comfortable perhaps showing up. Like, I know as a run coach myself, I find that whenever I work with someone who is like that 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 minute case, there's like such strange guilt associated
Mm-hmm.
with that of
Mm.
like, are you sure you want to work with me? I'm really slow. Whenever people tell me that, I'm like, what do you mean? What does that mean? Because in my mind, you're faster than someone who's not doing anything. And also
Yep.
just the fact that you are wanting this for yourself,
Yeah.
that should matter more than anything that your watch tells you or anything that any other
Yep.
messaging is coming through, which is why, with people I work with, I'm always like, why do you want this goal? Like, why? And again, that connecting to purpose, like how you phrased it, it's the why. Why is this something that's important to you? Why is this something that you're willing to make lots of sacrifices in order to
Mm-hmm.
make happen? And once we get clear on the why, then I try to connect the dots of like, okay, so if running a marathon is important to you because um you want to honor, and say for instance in your case, right? Like you want to honor your aunt's legacy. Okay, then if honoring your aunt's legacy is what this is about, it doesn't matter how fast or slow you do it. Again, fast or slow is relative, but
Yep.
that's not even the important part. So I wish, because again, thinking of like the gap of space, that's where these run clubs are really important because then you can filter out the noise of the dominant running industry, I guess,
Yeah.
to really meet people that are like, yeah, it doesn't have to look like that, or it doesn't
Mm-hmm.
have to be that way. And I know when I first started running, I think back to like my early races, I started with a run walk.
Mm-hmm.
And um, I remember being uncomfortable at certain races because the spectators would tell me, keep running, you can do it, you don't have to walk, you're almost there. And I would always have to tell them, I'm walking on purpose. Like this walk is, there's a purpose behind this walk.
Oh
And
yeah.
I've seen that that's gotten better. But even then, I feel like people still feel guilty. There's just a really interesting guilt about having to take walk breaks or moving quote unquote slower, which that's something that I wanted to say that when you were talking about these run clubs, which I find interesting because anytime we see the averages of, for instance, like a marathon, right? The
Mm-hmm.
average time, I think the number that was released this year of a woman's time of running a marathon was like a 4:45 or something like that. And it's like,
Yeah.
hey, if we kind of keep that in mind, then these people who are Boston qualifiers, and no
Yep.
no shade to them, or the person who's an Olympic trial qualifier, like those people, they really are outliers, or if not, they're on the other end of that bell curve. And there's a ton of people in the other direction.
Yep.
But it also goes back to what you said too of whose stories are being promoted and whose
Mm-hmm.
stories are being elevated and amplified. And
Yes. I mean, there will always be a space. There will always be a space for the Boston qualifier, for I mean, even to some extent, the middle of the pack. Like, but there have not been enough spaces for the back of the pack, for these minority groups, for all women. Like, I think I was talking with a club in DC that it's like an all girls run club, and a video went viral of their run club, and they were getting so much hate about being only for girls and for women. And they had to make a video, or someone had to make a video about it, and was like, the reason that this is all girls and all women is because that space has not been created. And we are coming together, as all women to embrace one another, to encourage one another, and to be a safe space, to not have to worry about a creepy person coming in and ruining the vibe. Like,
yeah,
and that's the fact of the matter. It's not to be exclusive, while it may feel exclusive to an outsider that can't join, whatever. Like, it is a space that hasn't been created to create safety and to create comfort and to create vulnerability and the feeling of being seen. So that's the push that's happening, and especially like these groups for the back of the pack. have not been done before, or if they have been done, it's been in very small quantities. Like there have been leaders and founders in this space that have been doing it for 4 or 5 years. Like Martinez Evans is a great example with
Yeah.
the Soul Life Run Club, or Badass Lady Gang with Kelly Roberts. Like they've been doing this. They've been in the industry for a while now, but it's just now getting momentum to a point where it's like, oh wow, like this is actually need and people are seeing it. Um, so and those spaces need to be created. They like people need to like get gung ho about it, like get that confidence to start those groups because it will have a snowball effect and it will show people, the people that are like more apt to like support local and to like be a part of those communities and to sign up for those races, like will show up. It's just about showing people that it's possible. And I think Back of the Pack is such an entry level and approachable group to be a part of. And then if you do have higher goals of running a Boston qualifying marathon, great, like do that. There will be spaces for you. I can promise that.
Yeah, I find that in general, at least like from what I've seen, there's plenty of space for people who are doing races, going for PRs. Like there are plenty of run clubs and
Yeah.
whatnot that are going to do that for you, and there's not enough of um again, I just it makes me so angry, and it's angry. I think anger is probably the word, when I'll like have people reach out to me and they'll be like, "Oh, I'd love to run with you, but I can't. I'll do it once I get faster." And I'm like, "What? What are we? No,
Yeah.
like just do it now. Like
Yeah.
just do it now." And also I think this is one of my big takeaways from my experience of going to run clubs, and I say it coming from a place of someone who is comfortable with running by herself, is that shoot, I lost my thought. It was just going to be like what was my thought? What was my thought? I lost it. But that, I guess maybe what I want to say is that it is a privilege to take up space in anybody's life and to have someone say, "Yes, I will run with you," or "Yes, I want to be with
Mm,
you." And if a person is not, this is what I want to say, if a person is not willing to slow down
mm,
to spend that time with you, that person is missing out, and you really should not give them any more attention. Like
no.
I just think it's that. So I
Yeah.
find that also in listening to what you were just saying about the run clubs are out there, to me what I'm hearing is kind of a call to action of those of us that are already in the running community have to take that initiative to create those spaces for people who are new, or for those people who are just starting and are running curious. I think there's, at least that's kind of what I heard from you. What
Yeah.
would you, I think, as we come to like nearing the end of this conversation, what would you say to people who are, I guess it's a two-parter, people who are already in the running community, what would you say to them? And then on the flip side to that is, what would you say to that person that's on the sidelines wanting to be in the running community, but telling themselves, "I'm too slow.
Mm,
I shouldn't be here."
mm. So I think to the people that are already immersed in the community, whether you're in a small town or maybe you're not in a major city and the running community is not present, or just hasn't been created yet, don't like be that change maker in your space, be that change maker in your community, fill that gap that is needed because while it may take a while for someone to show up, you never know. It may be the thing that was needed in your space and in your town and in your city. Um, and just go out there, like try something new. It's not going to go perfect. You'll learn things along the way. I mean, shoot, like this last year of having a realistic runner community in Nashville, I'm still learning. I still mess up. I There are things every single run that I'm like, "Ooh, that could have gone better. We need some more of this or that." And um it's a great learning process if you have the time and you have the bandwidth to do that. and you want to start a community, do it. Be that change maker. Because like opening the door for folks and giving them a space to escape or to create community that they may not have had through such a beautiful thing like running is so, so special. And you learn about yourself you learn things about yourself in a way that I can't even put into words. Um, and to the folks that are kind of on the sidelines right now, maybe have ran a few times in their lives or want to pick up running in the new year or right now, tomorrow, and pace is holding you back, I would say, um, there are multiple things. Follow people on social media, or find a friend, that is also interested that are encouraging. I think encouragement is the biggest one. Because when you start to hear those messages of encouragement, you start to believe them and you're like, oh, this is possible.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and if it's not going to encourage you, if it's going to actually demotivate you, get it out. You don't need to follow people. You don't need to have those people in your life. Um, because the funniest, I think I made a video about this like a really long time ago, but I was like, the best way to find out if people are in your corner is to sign up for a 5K or a 10K or a half marathon or marathon, because you will find out really quickly who's in your corner and who's not, who believes that you can do it and who is like, good luck. Why are you doing that? Um, and I lost some friends over it, and it is what it is. Um, and also just start with what I actually, social media friend Tatiana, she made a great video recently, about how she got into running and how she went from running a 5K to a marathon in a year, which is a great accomplishment. It's huge. And I never really thought about this, but her first tip was just start with walks.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, that is great. That is great advice. Like, start with walks and like maybe go for a 30-minute walk and sprinkle in 3 minutes of running. Like, do 30-second little bursts here and there and just get your body used to that, over the course of a month or two.
Yep.
And start there. And like, there's no, like, forget about pace. Don't wear a watch. Don't go with the Strava. Don't do any of that. Just do it and stop when it feels good. Um, and just know that you are capable of more than you think. And I can guarantee that you have been through harder shit in your life. And I'll tell you, running up a hill ain't got nothing on you. Whether you're walking it, you're trotting it, you're sprinting it, I don't care. But it has nothing on the other stuff that you've been through in your life. And if you can remember that and manifest that energy, running is a breeze.
Yeah. I wanted to piggyback on something that you said because it just occurred to me that, right. So oftentimes we get, I know for myself as well, there's an discouraged by the idea of creating something new. And I just wrote
Hmm.
it down that, especially for those of us who are already in the running community, if you have any connections or ties or something already existing, then perhaps what you're doing is you're not necessarily creating something new from scratch, but you're saying, hey, running store that you know me on first name basis because I come all the time. I'm interested in, if Thursday night is the night that you do all your group workouts, I'd be really interested in leading a group for the 13 to 15-minute pace.
Mm,
So it's not brand new. You're already going with what's
yes.
existing. And it's honestly, it's a win-win for everybody. Yes, you're creating a new group, but then you're also bringing people into that space and you're building on the
Yeah.
community that's already there. So I just want to say that because as you were talking, I'm like, wait a minute. We don't necessarily always have to be new from the ground
No.
up. It might just be what are the existing connections that I have right now? And is there anything within that that maybe I can do an offshoot? So again, like
Yeah.
if there's a brewery run every Wednesday, whatever the case is, then that could be someone like, hey, you can approach those organizers and say,
Hmm.
I'd be interested in leading a group for this pace, or I'd be
Yeah.
interested in leading the walkers and being in charge of the walkers. How can we make that happen? And that way, I think too, it also helps get the message out there. So it's not just you promoting it or you putting the word out there, then
Hmm.
there's something that's already existing helping as well. So I just wanted to like add to that. So
Yes,
yeah, I love that.
I completely agree. And tapping into the community that's already been built there.
Hmm.
And I'll tell you, if you do that, you will be you will be releasing a stress off of run specialty store owners and employees because most of the time what happens is those run specialty stores, especially in smaller towns,
Yeah.
like they are paying their employees to be there. So I would even suggest or bargain like, hey, I would love to lead or be the sweeper of the running group on the Wednesday night pub run or be the walking group lead, whatever it is, and for maybe like a discount in the store. Like,
Yep.
and I can commit to these months and these weeks. Here it is, and see what happens. Like, I mean, you never know until you try, and like they would appreciate the help. I can guarantee you that.
Yeah,
So,
and I'm even thinking of there's a local running store here that they have, and this one is more for like if you're someone who needs community service hours, right? If
oh,
your local
nice.
running store has a charitable component to it, because I know some of them here have like they have their own charity that's tied to the running store.
Yeah.
So even that, right? You could offer to lead a group and in exchange for them signing off
Mhm.
on you getting community service hours, like that could be
Yep.
something that is as well. Those are just ideas. I feel like you and I can go back and
Yeah.
forth with lots of
Oh,
ideas.
yeah, for
So,
sure.
okay, I have two more questions slash asks of you.
Okay.
The first one is, can you share with us what are you most excited about for 2025?
Mm. I am the most excited about not having a race is one. At least for now. I've got some ideas, but not having a bunch of races, saving some money in that department.
Mhm.
Um, I am excited about, um, oh man, what else am I excited about? I'm just excited for a new year. 2024 was tough. It was a really exhausting year. While it was so special and there were so many great things that happened, there was a lot of like behind the scenes things that were happening that were really, really challenging for me. And I'm in my 20s, like I'm figuring it out. Also, whoever said that 20s were the best years of your life, you're wrong, you're
No,
lying.
no,
Um, they're
no.
great in some aspects. I'm learning a lot of lessons, but dang, this is hard. Uh, so yeah, I just wanted to put that out there.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I'm excited because I my one of my big goals in 2025 is to move out of my hometown, and to go to a new city and create a new life and just open that next chapter. And I'm excited for what's to come with the Realistic Runners community. I have a lot of big goals as far as bringing more opportunity to the community and really just amplifying the community and providing opportunities. So, and continuing to learn how to improve and how to like make a path for all the back of the pack runners with the support and learning and data I'm getting from social media, but then also from other friends and whatnot in the space. So,
So an offshoot extra bonus question. Is the
yes.
realistic runners, is that like your business or do you have some other running related business?
Yeah, so I guess I can say it. So I this is not I've not publicized this because I life happened, but in August, actually a year after the Realistic Runner was created, I left my job to pursue the Realistic Runner um as a business, not from a content creation like paid partnership side of things. While that door is open every now and again, I don't not made a lick of money off of this thing.
Mhm.
But after working in the industry for about a year, I saw a gap and I really wanted to explore the option and opportunity of creating change behind the scenes, and helping brands and retailers uh, see that the back of the pack is there and needs to be catered to. So that looks like consulting, education, speaking, um, along with content creation is a another bonus, but not the main focus. So yeah, really, really tapping into a lot of these run specialty stores across the US and a lot of brands and helping them to see and how to cater to the back of the pack runner, not only with their words, but with their actions. And yeah, it's been a wild ride. It got kind of put on pause because of the hurricane. So we have since redirected a little bit, but it's been a journey. And now I can officially say that I have a business because for a while there, I was like, I won't have a business until I have a client, and I've got a client now. So,
Yep. There
woo!
you go. Listen, I think the hardest step is always putting yourself out there, especially when it's
Yeah.
a new business venture of like, I'm doing this and this is what it is. And I think I find just when we're looking at, I recently was in Savannah for the Every Woman's Marathon,
Oh,
and it was such a it was a very beautiful experience um because I so this for me was my takeaway, right? And it was there were over 7,000 runners,
mm,
and me, and I feel like if you want to dig into the data for every woman, so you totally should, because I think it'll help prove your point to these running stores and whatnot.
yeah.
So I over 7,000 runners. I did the race in 5:38, maybe. I think that's what it was. And
Woo.
I believe I was like, like 2,200 in line. And
Oh,
when I saw
wow.
that, and I remember telling my friend, I'm like, this is the data. Like, this is the real stuff.
Yeah.
Like, look at 7,000 finishers. And even with a
Yeah.
5:38 finish, you're in the top third of finishers. So think of all those other, 5,000 women, other
Yep.
runners behind us.
Yep. That's amazing.
That's just I think a tip for you. Go look into the Every Woman's Marathon data, and I think that'll just like when you even it's just like running store, like look at what we're missing out on
Yeah.
because of that. I had an experience last year that I went into a running store, and I had just ran the London Marathon, and I went in and I was, going through my cycle of getting new running shoes. And the person who was working at the running store asked me how far away I was from a Boston qualifying time. And I was like, no, like, no. So I think even just like right, like those are the conversations that
Uh,
running stores should be having of like when a person comes in and they're new, don't even bother saying anything about time. Time is not relevant when
yep.
you're starting. What's important about when you're starting is getting into a routine of moving your body. So
Hmm.
you're the person who said just start walking. Like anytime I start working with someone new and their marathon is their goal, our first our first line of business is walks. And it's
Mm,
walks because I want them to get used to 30 minutes 3 times a day of being on their feet,
yep.
right? We can spend like 2, 3 weeks of just walking because I
Yep.
want you to get in the habit of it. And then after that, let's sprinkle in some running. Nothing's changing. It's still 30 minutes 3 times a week. We're just changing how quickly you're doing it.
Hmm.
So I just wanted to now that you shared your business, I'm like, oh my gosh, there's obviously so much you can do with it.
Yeah.
And Every Women's Marathon might be a really, really fun one for you to dive into of like,
Yeah.
let's actually take a look at who's doing these races and in your marketing and in your promotions and in the people who are the spokespeople for your running store, your brand. Is it really reflective of everyone? Like, is it reflecting everyone that could be doing?
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
I love that. Okay. Final question. Oh my gosh, I can go off
I
for
feel
hours.
like we could talk for hours. This
Oh
is,
yeah,
I'm loving
yeah,
it.
yeah. All right. Final question is just if you can once again remind everyone where they can connect with you online, what's the best way to get in contact with you, and just again, what are the handles that you have for your different accounts?
Yeah, so TikTok and Instagram, you can find me at the realistic runner. Okay, well, sorry, I have to say this again. You can find me on TikTok and Instagram at the dot realistic dot runner. And then we actually just well, I say I just created we finally have a community page on Instagram for the realistic runners community as a whole. So we had a Strava club for kind of the worldwide realistic runner community, and we were doing virtual runs, and then I had the Asheville community here. I was like, you know what? It's time to make this on Instagram so we can like share all the photos that everyone was, posting and celebrate all the runs. So we've got an Instagram community at the Realistic Runners, and then a Strava Club community at the Realistic Runner, Realistic Runners, and then also a Facebook group for the local Asheville community um, that you can find on the Realistic Runners Instagram page. So those are all the places that you can find me and the Realistic Runner community and move your body either virtually or locally here in Western North Carolina.
I love it. Thank you so, so much. I know we covered a lot in this
Yes.
in this discussion. So thank you for going on the journey with me of just I like to follow the thoughts as they come up. And I know we could have talked for a lot longer. So thank you for coming. Thank you everyone for listening. I'm gonna give you, Makenzie, final words here for everyone.
Um, just do the dang thing. Don't be afraid. Don't let a narrative that was told to you at some point in your life or what you're seeing online deter you from accomplishing something that could genuinely change your life. And put one foot in front of the other. You will cross that finish line when you cross it, and it does not matter when you get there.
That's it. All right. Bye everyone.